Elena had always been different from her stepmother and stepsister. While Lady Margot and Isla thrived on gossip, vanity, and power, Elena found comfort in books, nature, and kindness. After her father's death, her once loving home turned into a place of cruelty. Lady Margot took control of the estate, treating Elena more like a servant than a daughter, making her do chores, limiting her meals, and ensuring she never attended social events where she might attract attention. Despite the harsh treatment, Elena remained resilient. She was not just beautiful, but intelligent, kind, and graceful, qualities that made Lady Margot seethe with jealousy. Isla, spoiled and self-absorbed, mimicked her mother's cruelty, mocking Elena at every opportunity. They wanted her to believe she was nothing, that no one of importance would ever notice her. One morning, the entire kingdom buzzed with excitement. A royal decree was issued. Prince Adrian was hosting a grand ball to find his future bride. Nobles from across the land prepared their daughters, eager for the chance to marry into the royal family. Isla was ecstatic, already fantasizing about becoming a princess, while Lady Margot saw this as the perfect opportunity to elevate their status. However, she also realized one glaring problem: Elena. Lady Margot knew that if Elena attended the ball, she could easily outshine Isla. Her beauty, natural grace, and warm heart would make her a threat. She could not allow that to happen. That night, as they dined, she put her plan into motion. With a false smile, she told Elena that of course she could attend the ball. Elena's eyes lit up with hope, unaware of the wicked scheme forming in her stepmother's mind. Isla giggled, already in on the plan. Lady Margot intended to humiliate Elena so thoroughly that no nobleman, especially not the prince, would ever consider her worthy. If she played her cards right, Elena would be so embarrassed that she'd never show her face at court again. Elena, despite her doubts, allowed herself to dream. Perhaps this ball would be her chance to escape her miserable life, to be seen for who she truly was. But little did she know, her stepmother had already set her downfall in motion. Lady Margot wasted no time putting her wicked plan into action. She knew that simply forbidding Elena from attending the ball would not be enough. Elena was stubborn, and her beauty and grace were undeniable. Instead, she needed to ensure that if Elena did manage to attend, she would be humiliated beyond repair. The first step was destroying Elena's gown. Lady Margot pretended to be generous, allowing Elena to have one of her late mother's dresses altered for the occasion. Elena, touched by this rare act of kindness, spent days working on the gown herself, stitching delicate embroidery and making small adjustments. But just the night before the ball, Lady Margot ordered her maids to sneak into Elena's room and shred the dress beyond repair. The once elegant fabric was left in tatters, covered in ink stains and dirt. When Elena discovered the ruined dress, her heart sank. She had dared to hope, just for a moment, that she could have a night free from cruelty, but reality crashed down upon her. Isla feigned sympathy, pressing a hand to her chest in mock horror. "Oh, dear sister," she said, barely suppressing a smirk. "What a shame. I suppose you won't be attending after all." Lady Margot sighed dramatically. "Such a pity. But you must understand, Elena. A girl of your position wouldn't fit in at a royal gathering anyway." Elena clenched her fists, but she refused to let them see her cry. She would not give them the satisfaction. Not content with merely ruining Elena's gown, Lady Margot took her plan further. On the day of the ball, she spiked Elena's evening tea with a potent but harmless herb that would make her dizzy and weak. She ensured Elena drank every last drop, smiling sweetly as she did. Within the hour, Elena felt a strange sluggishness creeping over her body. Her head felt heavy, and her vision blurred at the edges. When she tried to stand, her knees wobbled beneath her. "You look pale, dear," Lady Margot said, feigning concern. "Perhaps it's best if you stay home and rest." Elena knew something was wrong. She had been perfectly fine all day, but now she felt ill, too ill to argue. As Isla and Lady Margot left in a flurry of silk and perfume, Elena sank onto her small bed, despair washing over her. But her stepmother had underestimated her. Elena was not one to give up so easily. Just as she was about to succumb to hopelessness, Lucian, her childhood friend, and the stable boy, slipped into her room. He had overheard Lady Margot's schemes and had come to help. Unlike what most believed, Lucian was not just a simple stable hand. His mother had been a noblewoman who had fallen from grace, and he understood better than anyone what it was like to be treated as less than. "I won't let them win," he said firmly, pulling out a simple yet elegant gown he had secretly borrowed from a kind noblewoman who pitied Elena's situation. "Come with me. I'll get you into that ball." Elena hesitated, her body still weak from the drug, but she saw the determination in Lucian's eyes. Gathering her strength, she refused to let Lady Margot's wicked plan keep her from her fate. With Lucian's help, she sneaked out of the house and rode toward the palace, unaware that the night ahead would change her life forever. Elena arrived at the palace just as the ball was in full swing. The grand hall glittered with golden chandeliers, and the sound of laughter and music filled the air. Dozens of noblewomen, draped in the finest silks and jewels, twirled across the marble floor, each hoping to catch the prince's attention. Dressed in the borrowed gown, Elena slipped in unnoticed, her heart pounding. She was a stark contrast to the overdressed women around her. Her gown, though simple, flowed elegantly, and her lack of heavy jewels only highlighted her natural beauty. Still, she felt out of place. Would anyone even notice her? She moved cautiously along the edges of the ballroom, trying to avoid attention, but fate had other plans. Prince Adrian's gaze landed on her almost instantly. Unlike the other women who flaunted themselves in front of him, the mysterious girl by the pillars seemed different. She wasn't vying for attention, nor was she dripping in wealth. She carried herself with quiet grace, her expression thoughtful as she observed the room. He found himself intrigued. Adrian excused himself from the exhausting small talk with Isla and the other noblewomen and made his way toward Elena. When she realized he was approaching, her breath caught in her throat. "You seem far more interested in the walls than in the dance floor," he remarked with a teasing smile. Elena, despite her nerves, met his gaze. "Perhaps the walls have more interesting things to say than most of the people here." Adrian laughed, a genuine warm sound that made Elena relax. Most noblewomen only sought to impress him with empty flattery, but this girl had a spark of intelligence and wit. He held out his hand. "Dance with me." Elena hesitated. She had never imagined she would actually speak to the prince, let alone dance with him. But as she placed her hand in his, warmth spread through her. She let him lead her to the dance floor, where they moved in perfect harmony. As they danced, they spoke, not of riches or titles, but of dreams, duty, and freedom. Adrian confided in her about the pressure of being a prince, expected to marry for political gain rather than love. Elena, in turn, spoke of her longing to escape the confines of her cruel home and be seen for who she truly was. With each step, Adrian felt something shift within him. The women he had met before all spoke of their beauty or their family's wealth, but Elena, she spoke of things that mattered. From across the ballroom, Lady Margot and Isla watched in horror. Isla had spent the entire evening trying to impress the prince, yet here he was, captivated by Elena, the very girl they had tried to ruin. Lady Margot's face twisted in fury. "This cannot happen," she whispered to Isla. "We need to put an end to this, now." As the music swelled and Elena spun in the prince's arms, she had no idea that her stepmother was already planning her next cruel move, one that would leave her humiliated in front of the entire court. As Elena and Prince Adrian danced, lost in conversation and the warmth of each other's presence, Lady Margot and Isla seethed with rage. Every moment Elena spent with the prince was a threat to their carefully laid plans. Isla, who had imagined herself as the future princess, could barely contain her jealousy. Lady Margot, ever the schemer, acted swiftly. She whispered to a nobleman loyal to her family, instructing him to accidentally spill wine on Elena. The man, smirking, took his goblet and maneuvered toward her. Just as Elena finished a graceful twirl, a splash of deep red wine landed across the front of her dress. Gasps rippled through the ballroom. The once elegant fabric was now stained, the dark liquid spreading like a cruel mark against her pale gown. I'm so sorry, the nobleman said, though his eyes gleamed with amusement. Eleanor's breath hitched. She glanced around, feeling eyes on her, whispers beginning to spread. Before she could recover, Isla rushed to her side, feigning concern. "Oh, Elena," she said dramatically, just loud enough for the guests to hear. "This is terrible, but perhaps it's for the best." Elena narrowed her eyes. "For the best?" Isla sighed, placing a gentle hand on Elena's arm as if comforting her. "I mean, let's be honest. It was only a matter of time before the truth came out." Murmurs grew louder as nobles turned to watch the unfolding scene. "What truth?" Prince Adrian asked, his expression shifting from warmth to confusion. Isla bit her lip as if hesitating. Then, with false sympathy, she turned to the prince. "Oh, dear brother, I hate to be the one to tell you this, but Elena isn't who she pretends to be." A collective hush fell over the room. Isla continued, her voice shaking as if she were heartbroken. "She's not a noblewoman. She's just a poor orphan girl, a mere servant in her own home. She came here deceiving everyone, hoping to ensnare you with her lies." The whispers turned into full conversations. An imposter? A commoner? A liar? The words swirled around Elena like daggers. The queen, who had been watching with interest, leaned forward in her chair, her sharp gaze fixed on Elena. "Is this true?" she asked, her voice calm but laced with judgment. Eleanor's throat tightened. She turned to Prince Adrian, who stood motionless, conflict written across his face. "I never lied," she said softly, her voice trembling. "I never claimed to be anything other than myself." Lady Margot stepped forward, her expression one of mock disappointment. "And yet you allowed the prince to dance with you, knowing full well that a future queen must be of noble blood." Elena's heart pounded. She had fought so hard to come here, to have this one night of freedom, and now she was being painted as a fraud. The prince hesitated. He wanted to believe her, but doubt clouded his mind. Why hadn't she told him the truth from the start? Was she really here for him, or had she only seen the crown? Overwhelmed, Elena turned and ran. The murmurs turned to laughter, some pitying, others cruel. She pushed past the grand doors, fleeing into the night, tears blurring her vision. As she disappeared into the darkness, Adrian stood frozen, his heart warring with his mind. Something felt wrong. No matter what they said about her, he couldn't shake the feeling that letting her go was a mistake. Elena ran through the dark streets, her heart pounding in her chest. The night air was cold, but it could not numb the burning humiliation she had just suffered. Every whisper, every cruel laugh echoed in her mind. The prince had hesitated. That hesitation was enough to tell her everything. He believed them. When she finally reached home, exhausted and shaken, she found Lady Margot waiting for her at the entrance. Her stepmother's face twisted into a cruel smirk. "How foolish of you to think you could escape your place," she sneered. Before Elena could react, two of the household servants grabbed her by the arms. "You've embarrassed this family for the last time," Lady Margot said. "From now on, you are nothing more than a prisoner in your own home." With that, she ordered Elena to be locked in the attic. The door slammed shut, the heavy bolt clicking into place. Elena threw herself against it, pounding with all her strength, but no one came to her aid. She was trapped. Days passed, each one more unbearable than the last. The attic was cold, dusty, and barely lit. They brought her scraps of food, just enough to keep her alive. She wanted to fight back, to escape, but with no way out, she felt hopeless. Then, one night, she heard a soft tapping at the window. She crawled toward it and gasped. Lucien stood outside on the roof, his face determined. "Elena," he whispered, "I'm getting you out of here." Tears of relief filled her eyes as she helped him push the window open. Lucien tied a sturdy rope to a beam, and with his help, she climbed down. Her hands shook, her muscles weak from hunger, but she refused to give up. As soon as her feet touched the ground, she turned to him. "I can't stay here," she said. "But where can I go?" Lucien smiled. "We're not running away. We're going to fight." Meanwhile, at the palace, Prince Adrian could not get Elena out of his mind. The doubt that had plagued him at the ball now felt like a mistake. Something about the way she had looked at him before she fled, the raw pain in her eyes, haunted him. Determined to uncover the truth, he began investigating Elena's past. He sent his trusted men to speak to servants, merchants, and anyone who had known her family before her father's death. The reports that returned shocked him. The rumors about Elena being a fraud, planted by Lady Margot herself. The money that should have been Elena's inheritance, stolen by Lady Margot. Elena had been a noblewoman by birth, but her stepmother had stripped her of everything and ensured she had no way to prove it. Rage boiled inside him. He had doubted her, had let her be humiliated without standing up for her. He would not make that mistake again. He devised a plan. Lady Margot and Isla had made fools of others for too long. It was time for them to be exposed in front of the entire court. The next royal gathering was set to take place in 2 days. Adrian sent an invitation to Lady Margot, summoning her to the palace under the pretense of rewarding her family for their service to the kingdom. He knew she would come, blinded by greed and the belief that she had won. Little did she know, she was walking straight into her downfall. The royal gathering was grander than the ball had been, filled with nobles eager for gossip and entertainment. Lady Margot and Isla arrived in their finest gowns, their confidence unshaken. They had no idea what was about to unfold. Lady Margot beamed as she curtsied before the king and queen, fully expecting to be praised for raising such a fine daughter as Isla. Prince Adrian stood nearby, his expression unreadable. The court was silent as he stepped forward. "Lady Margot," he said, his voice calm but commanding. "There is much to discuss about your family's contributions to the kingdom." Lady Margot lifted her chin proudly. "It is an honor, Your Highness." The prince's eyes darkened. Yes, and an honor to tell the truth at last. A murmur spread through the court. Before Lady Margot could react, a servant stepped forward with a box filled with documents, evidence of her crimes. Prince Adrian took a scroll and unrolled it. This is the record of Elena's inheritance, the wealth that rightfully belonged to her after her father's passing, yet all of it was transferred to your name. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "That is preposterous," Lady Margot snapped, though her face paled. The prince continued, "And here are letters written to nobles before the ball, filled with falsehoods about Elena being a fraud. You manipulated the court to destroy her reputation." Isla's smile faltered. "Mother?" The queen, who had been watching carefully, now turned to Lady Margot with cold authority. "Have you anything to say in your defense?" Lady Margot's mind raced. She needed a way out. Desperation flashed in her eyes before she pointed at Elena, who stood at the edge of the gathering. "She's deceiving you all," Lady Margot shouted. "She tricked the prince into believing she was noble. She's nothing but a liar." "Enough!" The king's voice silenced the room. His gaze bore into Lady Margot, his displeasure evident. "You have been caught. Do not make a further mockery of yourself." Lady Margot's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Isla clutched her mother's arm, looking around as if someone would come to their aid. No one did. "The punishment for your crimes is clear," the king declared. "You and your daughter are hereby stripped of your noble status and exiled from court. You will live as commoners, with no claim to wealth or title." "No!" Isla shrieked, tears spilling down her face. "This isn't fair. I was meant to be a princess." Lady Margot, shaking with rage, made one last desperate attempt to frame Elena. She lunged toward the evidence, as if destroying it could undo everything. But before she could reach it, Lucian stepped forward and blocked her path. "Your games are over," he said firmly. Defeated, Lady Margot collapsed onto the floor. The guards moved in to escort her and Isla away. Prince Adrian turned to Elena. "Justice has been served, but I owe you an apology. I should have believed in you." Elena's heart softened as she met his gaze. "The truth is all I ever wanted." The king motioned to a servant, who handed Elena a sealed document. "Your rightful status is restored, along with your father's estate. You will never be without a home again." Tears welled in her eyes, not of sadness, but of relief. After years of cruelty, she was finally free. As the last echoes of Lady Margot and Isla's protests faded from the grand hall, silence settled over the court. The nobles, still reeling from the shocking revelations, now turned their attention to Elena and Prince Adrian. Elena stood tall, her rightful status restored, but a storm of emotions raged inside her. The humiliation at the ball, the pain of Adrian's hesitation, it all still lingered. She had fought so hard to reclaim her life, and now she wasn't sure what came next. Prince Adrian stepped forward, his expression full of regret and something deeper, love. "Elena," he said softly, his voice carrying through the hall, "I owe you more than just an apology. I should have trusted you. I should have stood by you when you needed me most." Elena met his gaze, her heart conflicted. "You hesitated," she whispered, the hurt still raw. "You believed them." Adrian's hands clenched at his sides. "I was a fool. I let doubt cloud my judgment. But the moment you left, I knew I had made a mistake. That's why I searched for the truth. That's why I fought to bring justice." He stepped closer, not because of guilt, but because I care for you. Elena searched his face, looking for any sign of deception. There was none. His confession was raw, honest, and filled with sincerity. She took a deep breath. "I don't want to be someone you rescue, Adrian. I want to be your equal." His lips curled into a soft smile. "Then let us stand as equals. You are the bravest person I have ever met, and I would be honored if you stood by my side. Not because you need me, but because you want to." Elena felt the last of her doubts fade. This wasn't just about a royal ball, nor about fairy tale romance. This was about mutual respect, about choosing each other despite everything. Adrian gently took her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. A knowing voice broke the silence. A love built on courage and honesty is a rare thing. Elena turned to see the Queen watching them with an approving gaze. The same woman who had once been skeptical of her now studied her with newfound respect. "Elena," the Queen continued, "you have proven yourself worthy, not by noble birth, but by the strength of your heart. You have faced cruelty, injustice, and betrayal, yet you stand here with dignity." She turned to her son. "If this is the woman you have chosen, then she has my blessing." A wave of relief washed over Adrian, and he turned to Elena, silently waiting for her answer. Elena's heart swelled. After everything, the suffering, the betrayal, the fight for her freedom, she had won not just justice, but love. She squeezed Adrian's hand. "Then I choose you too." A bright smile spread across his face. In that moment, the court erupted in applause, and the two of them knew their story was just beginning. Spring had come, and with it, the palace gardens were in full bloom. Roses, jasmine, and lilacs filled the air with their sweet fragrance, creating the perfect setting for what was about to unfold. Beneath the glow of lanterns strung through the trees, Prince Adrian led Elena to a secluded spot, away from the watching eyes of the court. "Elena," he said, turning to face her. His expression was softer than she had ever seen, filled with hope. "From the moment I met you, you changed everything. You challenged me, made me see the world differently, and showed me what true strength looks like." Elena's heart pounded as he dropped to one knee, revealing a ring, simple yet elegant, a sapphire set in silver. "I don't want a queen who was chosen for me," Adrian continued. "I want a partner, an equal, someone who will rule by my side not because of a title, but because of love. Will you marry me?" Tears welled in Elena's eyes, but this time they were of joy. Just months ago she had been locked away, treated as nothing more than an inconvenience in her own home. Now she was standing before the man who had fought for her, who had chosen her, not for status, but for who she truly was. She smiled, the kind of smile that came from deep within the heart. "Yes," she whispered, her voice full of emotion. 1,000 times yes. Adrian slipped the ring onto her finger, and before she could say another word, he pulled her into his arms, kissing her as the stars shimmered above them. Back at the palace, Lucian stood among the royal advisors, his place now secured. For his loyalty and bravery, Adrian had appointed him a trusted royal advisor, ensuring that his voice would be heard in the kingdom. No longer just a stable boy, he had found his own place in this new world. As for Lady Margot and Isla, their downfall had been swift. Stripped of their nobility, they were exiled to a remote estate, far from the grand halls of the court they once sought to control. Their wealth was gone, their influence shattered. Isla spent her days in bitter regret, while Lady Margot, once the master of manipulation, had no one left to scheme against. They were nothing but a forgotten footnote in history. That night, as the palace held a grand celebration, Elena and Adrian shared their first dance as an engaged couple. The stars above them seemed to glow brighter, as if blessing their union. "I never imagined my stepmother's cruel schemes would lead me here," Elena murmured, resting her head against Adrian's chest. He chuckled, holding her closer. "Sometimes, fate has a funny way of turning even the darkest moments into something beautiful." And as they danced under the starlit sky, Elena knew that her story was not just about survival. It was about love, resilience, and a future she had chosen for herself.